Hello. Good to see you.
Alright there, Revenants, welcome back to Code Vein and the Road to 100, where on this run here, going for 60 stars, I'd like to talk through a little bit about bayonets, their use cases, and maybe some topics that some of you who are new or relatively early in their playthroughs here in Vein, that you've most likely come across bayonets here and there at different points, and I'm gonna kind of go through them kind of in the order maybe that you find them, accidentally or on purpose, and we'll investigate kind of some of the reasons why or why not bayonets may or may not be misunderstood very well here. They're probably one of the most misunderstood tools that you have at your access in the game here, and I want to kind of go through some of why that might be the case. So bayonets to start, as you can see here,
Wanting to be cautious, but
we're going to be running Artemis, we're going to be running the Lost Bayonet, because you find it here in the underground very early. It's like your second chest or something like that. You pick this up, and you'll notice that Charge Accelerator, late game gift, Bayonet Mastery, fairly late game gift, Swift Destruction, late game gift, Cleansing Light, kind of mid to late game before you can use it on anything else, Blood Sacrifice, very early gift, Time Crunch, late game gift, Ranged Impact, it's kind of a mid game bayonet possibility, Overdrive, very early game, Valiant Heart, very late game, Cognitive Zeal, maybe not even in your first playthrough, depends if you play co-op or not. Charge Accelerator or Charge Boosters, pretty late game. Mobility Enhancers are fairly late game. So you'll notice that most of this stuff is fairly mid to late, and then even maybe your second playthrough kind of build types and varieties. And so that's one of the reasons why I think that bayonets are mostly misunderstood, because by the time you get to the point where you could be building a good bayonet build, where you can actually do damage, you can have I-core recovery, so on and so forth. Oh yeah, and the Black Blood Liberator is also pretty later half of the game. It's in the Ashen Cavern, right before the Gilded Hunter. And so if you pick this up, I mean, you're not thinking bayonets at that point. And so that's the thing, is that you really don't have a lot of these tools to make bayonets, super worth their weight very early on. There are some things that you might be able to pick up here and there to kind of use bayonets, but typically most of their worth comes in like a second playthrough or something. And so I think they're mostly overlooked just because of that fact that by the time you get done with the game one time and you already have, your two-handed sword build, your one-handed sword build, and you've kind of maybe played with halberds a little bit, you're not really interested in running a bayonet. So the Lost Bayonet, the shtick with this thing is that it shoots 5 bullets, very short range, for the cost of 2 I-core, and the regular shot is 1 I-core for a certain amount of damage, and then the double shot, or the charged heavy shot, is 2 I-core for double the damage if all 5 bullets hit somebody. So the deal with this is, what you're trying to do with this is you're constantly trying to hit somebody from very close range. For example, like that. You want to be right up on the enemy, which at that point, I mean, why would you want to shoot them if you can just hit them a couple times, right? But that's the entire point of what this bayonet is all about. Is it's not any kind of ranged bayonet, obviously, as you would normally play a bayonet. So not this chest. That's the the heavy axe. So that is really where the problem with this bayonet comes in, is when the enemy's off of a
Careful.
backstab like
Those
that,
boxes might
you
fall
can
over.
shoot
Watch
them
your
if you want to, and you can shred them for pretty big damage,
deep.
and that's
Survive
really
that far.
great. But the question is, why would you want to do that if you know, have some other means of doing big damage? Okay, so you can see in that second chest there, that is where we got the lost bayonet. It's not exactly the most powerful kind of a bayonet at all. It doesn't really have too much, you know,
You
interesting
have to
things
use
going
every
on
tool you
about it,
have, right?
except for the fact that, you know, you got to hit all of those bayonet shots with every enemy. Otherwise, otherwise you're leaving a huge amount of damage on the table,
Up there.
and that's kind of a super problem that you run into after a while. And we'll just use our claw veil here, our ogre style, to pick up some ichor here along the way. Now that is really how you go about getting
Look.
the majority of your ichor, is just backstabs, but cleansing light and blood sacrifice can help you significantly if you are you know, up against the wall and you need some extra
What I would have guessed.
some extra ichor just for
I
a
don't
few
like
shots
tight
here and there.
spaces like this.
Best thing is whoops, backstabs, because we have such a huge amount of ichor recovery from them. With this blood veil, it is a very, 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 very good blood veil for running this kind of a build. And this is also where bayonets kind of suffer, is just the fact that you need to know, you know, big where your big ichor recoveries are, so that way, whoops, so that way you don't find yourself caught out too often in any kind of serious way. So that way you can get as much ichor back as you need at a moment's notice with no real problems. Okay, and you can see that if we do hit these guys with all 5 bullets, not necessarily even all 5 bullets, but just enough of the bullets, most of the time, you know, we're doing just fine. We don't really need too much other problems here to worry about, and that is really nice that we do have such a huge high ichor recovery. And if we are right up on the enemy, we do have quite a bit of damage, actually, that we can put out on these guys. Now, we don't have any kind of element or anything. We do just straight up pure pierce damage with this bayonet. And that's also another thing that is not exactly like clear all the time, is what kind of damage are you doing to the enemy? And obviously for bayonets, I mean, it's not obvious, which is why we're talking about it, right? But you are doing pierce damage with the bullets, and so there's a lost bayonet as well. See, you pick them up all over this area. There's 2 of them. And so if you don't know when and where pierce is very good, it's kind of hard to know when and why you might actually use which bayonet, and what kind of shots they actually give off. So that's kind of also another reason for bayonets having some issues, is that you kind of need to understand when to use them, and how to use them with what builds and so on and so forth, in order to make sure that you know, have enough damage, enough ichor, everything, before you start running into different scenarios with different enemies and stuff. Okay. Okay, and you can see there that if you have a fast enough draw, if you're, you know, Clint Eastwood with Dirty Harry, and you can pummel these guys quickly with, you know, shower them with just tons and tons and tons of shots, then you can actually do pretty well overall. But see here, he's at a pretty good distance there, and we can't really do any more damage because we have very, very, very limited range. So this is the super weakness of this bayonet specifically, is just the fact that it has extremely short range. So it's almost like a melee fighter with a gun. Is as weird as that sounds to say, and as it stands to actually play, you're actually using this more like a very close range shotgun type weapon. Okay, so let's go ahead and just keep on rolling here. No need to stop for anything, because we have just tons and tons and tons of ichor recovery. And in the Oliver fight, obviously you can do parries, and you can get ichor back at exorbitant rates here with Avarice and the Devour Chrome on your Blood Veil. And so there's really no reason to, worry about any of that. In the Oliver fight, like how do you get ichor back and so on and so forth. And you can always count on parries for him. And he's pretty telegraphed overall, so you shouldn't have too much problem. Okay, so before we get to Oliver, we'll go for all of our things here, so we can go for a bunch of backstabs here to load up on these guys before the Oliver fight. Now, if you are, new to Vayne, and you don't know, can you use this strategy for, the beginning of the game here? Absolutely. You can absolutely go for Bayonets in the very first run here, because you get the Lost Bayonet here, and you can use it versus Oliver to great effect, even though he's he's the first boss in the game, and you can do very very well with this Bayonet versus Oliver in the very beginning of the game. You're relying on me? Okay, thanks, Mia. That feels good to be relied on. Okay, so now as we get up here, you'll notice that Oliver doesn't really put up too big of a fight, but that's the really nice part, is that the cool thing about it is that you have a bayonet, and you can but you're not going to be using it like a bayonet. You're going to use it more like a shotgun. And you can see how fast you can kind of chunk through his health pool there, just because of how amazing the damage is from this bayonet. And because he's so big, it does very well. Now you can go for some other techniques here, like blood sacrifice and stuff. But we'll try for maybe a parry here. There we go. There we go, and we'll finish him off with a shot to the face there. So you can make the bayonets, and that was about 80,000 HP that we just chunked through right there with Oliver. And that's really where you kind of need to understand when you would use a bayonet and why and how. And you have a claw veil at the beginning of the game. You don't obviously have all of these gifts and everything to charge up your shots much faster and all of that. And so, the speed at your, the speed of the charge shots will be much slower. Thanks, Louis. And so, but the principle is still the same, that you can get through all of that damage very quickly and very simply, actually, because of how.
Take a while to get the results.
Just because I'm getting tired, can you tell? Just because of how the bayonets are structured and everything, and it's pretty awesome that that you can actually do that in the very beginning of the game. And on your successive playthroughs, bayonets actually become a very wonderful, powerful tool that you have access to, and you get a huge array of other gifts that you can add to your repertoire, and all of a sudden bayonets actually become a very viable method of putting out damage, damaging the enemy, getting ichor back with a correct veil, so on and so forth. But that's typically one of the most overlooked things with bayonets is where is your ichor recovery. Typically it's blood sacrifice, but if you can get some of the basic understandings of, you know, your blood veil number here times 9 is your backstab damage or your parry damage, ichor recovery, sorry. And then all of a sudden, you know, these numbers here, they actually mean something. So you can actually math out, you know, how much ichor am I going to need to fuel all of my gifts while at the same time being able to shoot along the way. So time crunch is 5, uh, ranged impact is 5, this is 5, so that's 15. If I want to heal, that's 17. This is 10, so that's 27. This is 5, right? Yep. So that's 32, and this is 4. So that's 36 ichor. So I need 2 backstabs in order to fuel this entire kit here that I have. So 2 backstabs, and then I get 2 extra shots. So 2 shots and 2 backstabs, and my entire kit is paid for. So if you actually look at how much ichor everything costs and then match it to how much ichor you're actually getting back on backstabs or parries, then you'll actually know whether or not you can afford to run that bayonet kit or not. And that's typically where you run out of ability is, you know, you just don't have enough ichor to fuel your gifts while at the same time fueling the reasoning to shoot, which is where all of your big damage is coming from. And so if you're playing with just blood sacrifice, that was 36 ichor we said, and we need 6 blood sacrifices. Sometimes you just don't have the time to sit there and do 6 blood sacrifices and in conjunction with cleansing light and to do that amount of ichor recovery. So there's a lot of times where, you know, you actually need to sit down and think about, you know, where is your ichor coming from, and then how can I get that ichor. And that's where the creativity in bayonets comes from, is mainly in ichor recovery. And if you can get that part down of bayonets, then the rest of playing a bayonet actually goes out the window, and you're good to go all the time. So if you always have ichor, that's your number one goal to understanding how to play bayonets. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. We'll pick another bayonet and we'll move on from there, and we'll be in the parking deck next and facing the butterfly, so that should be fun. We'll see you then.